To the Tanker N endorsement training. My name is Josh Barron, and I'm a certified instructor here at Midwest Truck Driving School. Glad that you could join us today. So, if you're an existing student here at Midwest, this is the Tanker endorsement training that you need to take in order to take the actual written test at the DMV. If you're a new student to Midwest, well, welcome to Midwest Truck Driving School. I'm glad you could join us today. So, let's go ahead and dive right in here. First of all, obtaining a Tanker N endorsement. When you get your tanker endorsement, you get an N on your license. You must have a CDL or CLP and a DOT medical card. Most of you that are taking this have their CLPs already, or you already have a CDL and just want to add that tanker endorsement to your license. And then, of course, most all you have that DOT medical card, which you need in your back pocket anytime you are driving a CDL vehicle. Got to be able to complete the tanker endorsement training. Now, this is recommended, and I believe it is required in a few states, but it's recommended by the industry, and it is required by several companies and a lot of companies around the United States as well. So a lot of people like to go through this training, get the knowledge, get the information. That way it sets them up for success when they get down to the DMV to take the actual written knowledge test. So after completion of this, you can go down to the DMV and take your written knowledge test. And just know that there are some state instituted restrictions, and they do vary from state to state. So something we've seen is a lot of DMVs will limit to taking the knowledge test 5 times in a year. This is important. So you don't want to just go down there and just wing this test. You want to be prepared. You want to be cognizant. You want to be knowledgeable. You want to be trained on this material. The other thing is, in some states, there's a mandatory week waiting period in between tests. So if you were to fail it, say today, well, you would have to wait a week in order to retest for that specific endorsement test. So once again, really, really important stuff. I find many people like to go through this training 1, 2, 3 times just to be able to absorb and grasp all the information, and I encourage you to do the same as well. Many people that obtain the tanker endorsement also obtain the hazmat, the H endorsement, and they do go together with a lot of respect. Now, there's a lot of non-hazardous materials tankers out there, but there's also a lot of hazardous materials tankers out there as well. So when you receive both of them, the H and the N endorsement, you'll receive an X on your CDL, just signifying you have both the tanker and the hazardous materials endorsement. And those that are interested in the hazmat endorsement, the school here offers a great online hazmat training as well. I'll put a link to that at the end of the presentation here. So your endorsement's down here. Your P is your passenger, S is your school bus, H is your hazmat materials, X means you have a hazmat and tanker, N the tanker, and T the doubles, triples endorsement. All right, so let's go dive right into this information here. The definitions: tank and endorsement is required for certain vehicles that transport liquids or gases. So the actual regulation says individual containers larger than 119 gallons and hauling a total combined volume or an aggregate volume in those containers exceeding 1,000 gallons. So that's obviously not that much. And what we've been finding is there's been a lot of dry van drivers that have needed to get their tanker endorsement, because if they're hauling, say, 5 of those 250-gallon plastic totes of non-hazmat chemicals or liquids, guess what? They need their tanker endorsement because of this rule right here. So once again, larger than 119 gallons and then hauling an aggregate volume exceeding 1,000 gallons, you need that tanker endorsement on your license. So different types of tankers. You have portable tanks, similar to those 250-gallon totes, plastic totes that we're all familiar with that I talked about a second ago. Those are bulk containers that are not permanently attached to a vehicle. And then you have your cargo tank, which is bulk packaging, permanently attached, intended primarily for the carriage of liquids or gases. So this would be an example of a cargo tank. Now, this is permanently attached, this propane tanker here, UN number 1075. And that's a type of cargo tank. Most all propane tanks like this are going to be bulk packaging, permanently designed to stay on that truck or trailer. And then outage is allowance for expansion of liquid. We're going to talk about that a lot more when we talk about different products that we're going to be hauling in different tankers here coming up later in the presentation. Pre-trip, en route, and post-trip inspections. An important thing that we need to know is that there are a lot of different types of tankers. And now a lot of them may look similar. You have pressurized tankers, you have really non-pressurized tankers, you have cryogenic tankers that haul things like liquid oxygen. And so it's important to know and be familiar with the type of tanker that you're hauling. So I always encourage read the tanker's manual to learn how to inspect it properly, just because there are many different kinds of tankers out there. You want to inspect a tank vehicle before loading it, before driving it, and before unloading it. Once again, we're looking for leaks and potential leaks, as well as everything else that's part of our pre-trip. You can test the parking brake by setting the parking brake and letting out the clutch until you feel resistance. Now, on tankers, you have trailer parking slash emergency brakes, and then on the truck you would have tractor parking slash emergency brakes, and we want to test each one of them to make sure they're working properly. So simply put, you want to activate the trailer parking brake, feel that resistance, and then activate the tractor parking brake, feel that resistance. That way you know that this can't roll down a hill or can't move on you, that the parking brakes are engaged. And then make sure all manhole covers are closed before you drive the vehicle. So really important, a lot of tankers, when you are loading or unloading, you're going to open up that manhole cover on the top, and that way it can breathe as you're getting loaded or unloaded. But before you drive that down the road, we want to make sure to close that right there. Climb up the little ladder here and close that. Otherwise, once again, you could be leaking from the top of your tanker. Not something we want to do. When you dim your headlights from high to low, you should adjust your speed so you can stop at the distance you can see ahead. So this slide covers proper stopping and following distances. So that first bullet point there, kind of an example I can give. If your headlights allow you to see 250 feet in front of you, adjust your speed so you can stop within about 250 feet as well. And so that just kind of makes sense. When you're driving at nighttime and you have your high beams on, you can see a lot farther in front of you. When you go to your low beams, you can't see as far, so we're going to slow down a little bit so we can adjust to the distance in which that we can see ahead. Wet roads can double the stopping distance at any speed. That makes sense. Main reason for that is because we have a less coefficient of friction, and we don't have as much traction on wet roads, so therefore it's going to increase our stopping distance. If you double your speed, you need 4 times the distance to stop. This may sound kind of goofy, but the main reason for that is just because you're going twice as fast. Can you think twice as fast? Can you react twice as fast? And the answer is no, you can't. So it's going to almost exponentially increase your stopping distance, and specifically 4 times the distance to stop. Your total stopping distance for a semi-truck and trailer is a combination of perception distance, reaction distance, braking distance, and brake lag. So we're familiar with perception, reaction, and braking, but brake lag is going to be that of air brakes. And air brakes are kind of finicky in the fact that when you hit the brake pedal, you don't start stopping right away. So most people listening to this training are going to be familiar with hydraulic brakes. And as soon as you start hitting your brake pedal on a hydraulic brake system, you start slowing down, you start stopping. With air brakes, you have to pressurize that system. You have to compress that air by hitting that brake pedal. And that takes typically half to 3/4 of a second here, and typically adds about like 32 feet, and that's that air brake lag distance. And then you have your following distance. You want to leave at least 1 second of space for every 10 feet of vehicle's length, and then add 1 second for safety if over 40 miles an hour. So there's a few questions on the test that talk about following distance. I encourage you to write that algorithm down because that'll be able to get all those questions on following distance correct. So kind of an example I can give is, say you're doing 50 miles an hour in a 50-foot vehicle. 50 miles per hour in a 50-foot vehicle, how many seconds of following distance do we need? Well, 50 divided by 10 is 5. And then because we're doing over 40, we're going to add a second for safety. So we're going to need 6 seconds of following distance. So you can do some quick examples in your head there. But very, very important, especially when you get out on the road. Outage. Outage means allowance for expansion of liquid. You should know the outage needed for the liquid you carry because some liquids expand more than others when they get warm. This is really important. Now, every liquid, every gas has a degree of outage. The one that I can think of off the top of my head is propane. So this is a propane tanker right here. Now, propane boils at -44 degrees. So it's going to be impacted by temperature a lot more than other liquids, which is why your typical propane tank, you really don't fill it up past 85%. And that way you have that outage, that allowance for expansion of liquid. And because of that, you should not load a tank completely full. Now, everything has a degree of outage, so you almost never fill a tank completely full because you always want to give it some room to expand with temperature. Outage depends on the type of liquid, the coefficient of thermal expansion. So that's kind of the science behind it. Every liquid or gas expands at different rates, and that's the coefficient of thermal expansion. You need to know the outage requirements when hauling liquids in bulk. Once again, that just makes sense. Everything's got a different degree of outage. That's important to know before hauling that load.